Welcome to the Bedtime Sleep, a gentle space where your mind can wander through the wonders of science, while your body unwinds, breath by breath. Tonight, you'll journey through the story of life's instructions, the genetic code, in a rhythm as old as the earth itself. You'll follow the soft trails of molecules, messages, and memories written in every cell of your being. Let this be a lullaby made of atoms and ancestry, of the language life wrote before we had words. We begin not in a lab, but in the quiet hum of your body, where a deep wisdom lives in your cells, a whispered blueprint that has traveled through time just to reach you. Now close your eyes and let the story of life begin. You rest beneath your blanket, quiet now, but inside your body, something ancient stirs. In the stillness of this night, your breath becomes the first note of a quiet symphony, a biological rhythm that began long before your name, your thoughts, your memories. Within you, in every one of your trillions of cells, there is a whisper, a low, ceaseless hum, repeating itself again and again, not with words or sound, but in molecules, in motion, and meaning. This whisper is your genetic code. It doesn't speak aloud, but it speaks in you, in your bones growing, in wounds healing, in hair graying, in eyes blinking against the weight of sleep. It speaks when your heart beats without asking, when your lungs remember to breathe, when your body becomes something more than thought. This isn't just chemistry. It's choreography. Imagine each cell as a tiny room, and inside that room sits a coiled thread, tightly wrapped, humming softly. This is DNA, a spiral staircase, a twisted ladder of instructions. It is not written with letters as you know them, but with four molecular shapes for bases that pair like dancers. A with T, C with G, adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine for shapes, repeated in almost endless combinations. But though there are only four, they tell a story more complex than anything ever written by human hands. Each of your cells carries a full copy of this story, like giving every actor the entire script. But not every cell reads the same lines. Some speak only the lines that make muscle. Others read only the chapters that shape your skin. Some carry the words for blood, others for brain. The rest stay silent, still holding the entire book. It is as though your body is a great orchestra, and your DNA is the score. Every section plays its part. But the conductor, the one who chooses which lines to read, which rhythms to follow, is not a person, not a mind, not a will. It is shaped by need, by context, by the quiet dialogue between your cells and the world. And still, beneath all this, beneath all change, the code remains. Passed from parent to child, from egg to embryo, from the beginning of life through the streams of time. It was given to you not like a gift, but like a torch, still burning with the same patterns that lit the first flickers of life. You may think of time as a straight road, always forward. But the code in your cells is a circle. It turns on itself. It copies, folds, returns. It remembers. Long before you were born, your body began remembering. Not memories of thoughts or places, but of instructions, of how to make a human, how to build a body from water and dust and light. You are not made from scratch. You are made from history. Every heartbeat is an echo. Every blink, a continuation of a pattern first written not on paper, but in the wet warmth of a world still forming. In the oceans before language, before land, before names. And in that ocean, long ago, something happened, something small, unremarkable by size, but infinite in implication. A molecule twisted. It folded. And then it did something miraculous. It made a copy of itself. That moment, quiet, unseen, was the beginning of life as we know it. The first whisper, not a roar, not even a word, just a molecule mirroring itself. That echo grew. It began to repeat. And with each repetition, the code became more complex, not all at once, but like a story that adds detail with each retelling. And you, lying here now, are the result of billions of those retellings. You are the latest verse in a poem life has been writing for 4 billion years. And yet, the poem doesn't just speak of biology. It speaks of time. Because this code does not simply exist, it moves. It evolves. It is written and rewritten again and again by the hands of chance and the breath of necessity. Even now, as you rest, the cells in your body are copying this code. Not all of them, but enough to keep you whole. Some of the copies are perfect. Others are flawed. A single letter changes. A misstep in the spiral. But the rhythm continues. And in that rhythm, your body remembers. Not with thought, but with structure. It remembers how to be you. It remembers the shape of your spine, the color of your eyes, the rate at which your fingernails grow. It remembers how to close a wound, how to digest a meal, how to fall asleep. Your body is remembering even now. And what it remembers most clearly is this, to copy itself. Because that is how life continues, not through grand plans, but through repetition, through the quiet comfort of a pattern well practiced. There's something soothing in that, isn't there? That you are part of a pattern so ancient, so continuous, that even in sleep, your cells are practicing its steps. That even in stillness, you are moving with the rhythm of all life that came before you. And still, we must ask, where did that pattern begin? If your code is a copy, what was the original? What shape did it take in that warm primordial sea? And how did it know to begin repeating? These questions may not have simple answers, but they invite us deeper. Because if your cells carry this rhythm, if your breath echoes a molecule's quiet song, then perhaps, just perhaps, you are not just a receiver of this message. You are part of the message itself, a whisper in a long, unbroken chain, a single voice in a story being told by the very matter of the earth. And tonight, as you drift further into rest, let that story speak. Let it curl around you like a spiral, gentle and unending. For this code, this whisper in your cells, is only the beginning. And if life began by copying itself, what happens when it copies a mistake? You lie warm beneath layers of breath and stillness. The night outside is quiet, but the night inside you hums gently, endlessly, with an alphabet unlike any other, not written in ink, but in matter itself. Inside every one of your cells lives a scroll, coiled not from paper, but from molecules. DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. The name is long, winding, like the thing itself. But at its heart, the meaning is simple, almost childlike, a string of 4 tiny shapes. For letters, A, T, C, G, not letters as you know them. These aren't drawn with pens or spoken with lips. They are molecules, real things, made of atoms, drifting in the smallest spaces of your body. Adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine. They come together in pairs, always faithful, A with T, C with G, like old friends who remember their place in the dance. And the dance is the point. These 4 don't just sit. They spiral, twist, curve into a double helix, a ladder with its rungs made from matching hands. It's a shape so elegant, so constant, that once you see it, you never forget it. It looks like stillness, but it's alive with meaning. You carry this ladder in nearly every cell. Not just pieces, not just scraps, the whole scroll, from start to finish. Imagine a book so important that every room in your house kept a full copy. That is your body. That is your design. But what do the letters say? They don't form words you'd recognize. They don't make sentences or poems or songs. But they do something more subtle. They instruct. Like musical notes on a staff, their meaning comes not from the individual sounds, but from the arrangement, the pattern, the repetition, the rhythm. ATG might be a beginning. TGA might say stop. In between, the code instructs your cells to build, to take raw material and fold it into something useful. Hair, blood, bone, eyes, the curl of your fingers, the softness of your skin, all of it, written in this language without sound. You don't need to understand it for it to understand you. And yet, this simplicity, just 4 letters, has built everything. Every tree, every bird, every fish, every human. The same 4, rearranged 1,000, a million, a billion ways. Like a song made from only 4 notes, and yet no 2 songs the same. This alphabet is old. It did not begin with you. It began before species, before animals, before time had names. It began when chemistry stumbled into something more, a system that could remember its shape, a code that could say, "Make more of me." A is for the dream of continuation. T is for the tether to what came before. C is for the choice of shape. G is for the gamble of change. None of this was planned. It simply worked. And because it worked, it stayed. That's the quiet power of life's code. It repeats not because it's perfect, but because it survives. And with each repetition, the message becomes layered. Old sections stay in the scroll, even if they are no longer used. Like verses in a forgotten song, or notes scribbled in the margins of a recipe. Your DNA carries not just who you are, but who you've been, who your ancestors were. Ancient instructions, long out of use, but still there, still humming. The more you look, the more it resembles a palimpsest, an old manuscript written over many times, each new line laid atop the last. Some letters glow, others fade, but none are truly erased. Even silence leaves a trace. Your body reads this scroll carefully, but not all of it. Each cell chooses only the parts it needs. A liver cell ignores the chapters meant for skin. A neuron skips the instructions for bone. The rest of the scroll sits quietly, tucked away, and used, but never discarded. This too is part of the miracle, that your body knows how to read a book without ever learning to read. It does not ask questions. It simply follows the rhythm. Even now, as you drift toward sleep, your body continues to copy and read this code. Every second, cells divide. Every moment, DNA is unzipped, read, and zipped back again. The spiral unwinds, not in chaos, but with purpose, like a ribbon unfurling in slow motion. And the copies it makes? They are nearly perfect, but not quite, because in the copying, sometimes a letter is swapped. A C becomes a T. An A is forgotten. These changes are small, a single letter in a book of billions. But sometimes they matter. Sometimes they change the meaning of a sentence. Sometimes they change everything. This is where the story bends, where the soft spiral of perfection allows for surprise. Because what happens when a letter is copied wrong? What happens when the scroll reads a new instruction never written before? This question carries us onward, into the mystery of change, of error, of evolution. Tonight, you rest beneath the comfort of a code, for letters, soft and spiraled. But tomorrow, we'll ask how a simple mistake in this quiet alphabet can shape the difference between a wing and a hand. Close your eyes and let time fall away, like leaves in the wind. Let your breath carry you backward, not just years, not just centuries, but billions of years. Back before language, before land, before even the idea of life. You are drifting now through the great forgetting, to a time when memory had not yet been born. The earth is still young, a planet in its early dreaming. No forests, no footsteps, only rock, vapor, and ocean. The sky above is not blue, but heavy with storms, thick with volcanic breath. Lightning dances across the clouds, unbound. And below, stretching endlessly, the sea stirs in silence, a cradle without a child. This is where your story begins. Not in the warmth of a womb, but in the warmth of a planet's restless waters. The early oceans are dense with potential, not yet alive, but full of ingredients. Molecules floating and bumping into one another, again and again, like puzzle pieces tossed in a tide. There are no eyes to witness this world, no minds to measure it. But something beautiful is happening all the same. Energy flows through the water from sunlight, from heat vents at the ocean's floor, from the crackling fingers of lightning above. With each spark, the molecules shift, stretch, combine. They fold in strange and delicate ways, testing shapes that had never existed before. One day, perhaps by chance, perhaps by quiet inevitability, a molecule folds in such a way that it makes a copy of itself. It does not know it is doing this. It has no thought, no purpose. But it happens. A mirror in the water. A shape that becomes another shape, identical to the first. A copy. And with that, a thread is pulled. The first thread of continuity. The first moment where one thing becomes two, and both carry the same instructions. Not by accident anymore, but by design. From here, the story gathers momentum. Molecules begin to form chains longer, more stable, more intricate. Some can fold in on themselves, becoming more complex. Others help nearby molecules fold too. Slowly, these chains begin to interact to form networks. The first whispers of organization. You are floating among them now. You see them shimmer in the warmth, tiny as dust motes, yet full of promise. They bump and split, twist and pair, weaving themselves into fragile patterns. Some of them break apart quickly, too weak to last. But others endure. And those that endure begin to dominate. Not because they are strong, but because they are stable. Because they can make more of themselves before they vanish. These are not yet cells. Not yet life. But they are the memory of shape. They are the prelude to something remarkable. And still, the ocean holds them gently, a womb as vast as the sky. These first replicating molecules do not need walls or shells. They float freely, their patterns spreading like ripples. Each one a soft possibility. You may ask, why water? Because water is patient. It cushions and dissolves. It allows motion without violence. It gives molecules room to move, to meet, to merge. It is the original collaborator, the silent stage on which all life's rehearsals played out. Even today, your cells are full of water. The whispers of that first sea are still inside you. You carry the ocean in your blood, in your tears, in the fluid around every cell. Salt water not as a memory, but as a home your body has never left. You are still swimming in the beginning. Now the molecules begin to cluster, not randomly, but with intention. They gather around oily membranes, bubbles that offer a kind of shelter. Inside these soft walls, reactions can happen faster, more efficiently. Molecules start to protect one another, to work together, to depend on each other. This is the birth of the protocell, the ancestor of all cells, including yours. Not yet alive as we define it, but close. A container of code. A place where replication is repeated, preserved, and passed on. Imagine one of these protocells drifting quietly through the water, its contents pulsing with the beat of a copying rhythm. It is small, invisible to any future eye, yet it holds a blueprint, not of a human, not of a fish or tree, but of itself. A blueprint for being. This is the first memory. Not a thought, but a structure. Not an idea, but an instruction. And with it comes time. Because once something remembers how to make itself, the arrow of time begins. There is now a before and after. A parent and a child. A copy and an original. Time, as you feel it now, forward, continuous, marked by replication and change, begins in this moment. The earth does not notice. The stars do not pause. But the ocean has become something more than matter. It has become memory. The code inside you today, those 4 letters, folded in spirals, is the echo of that first remembering. Billions of years, and the molecules still copy themselves. Still fold, still pair, still preserve. They're not perfect. No copy ever is. But that, too, becomes part of the story. Because sometimes, in the copying, something changes. A small accident. A single letter replaced. A new fold. A new function. And that small difference can survive if it helps the protocell last a little longer, copy a little faster, gather a little more energy. This is the beginning of evolution. And so the ocean, once still and formless, becomes a library of trial and error, of thousands, then millions, of different molecular experiments. Some vanish, some persist. Over time, the patterns grow more intricate, more refined. What began as a ripple becomes a wave. Eventually, from this slow dance of replication and chance, the first true cells emerge. Cells that can repair themselves. Cells that can sense. Cells that can divide again and again. And from these cells, slowly, patiently, all life will grow. You are made from their descendants. You are not separate from this ocean, this memory, this unfolding. You are its continuation. You are its breath, its rhythm, its dream-given shape. Tonight, as you drift further into sleep, imagine that early sea still inside you, not as a place, but as a feeling, a warmth, a hush, a whisper that life remembers how to begin. And now you might ask, if life began in the ocean with copying, what happens when the copy changes shape? You drift now in the soft space between thoughts. Your breath slow, your limbs quiet. But inside your body, a delicate ballet unfolds. Unseen, unstoppable. Somewhere deep within your cells, a strand of DNA uncoils, revealing its ancient script. A section, just a small stretch of letters, is copied into a message called RNA. The DNA itself stays tucked away, like an old masterwork locked safely in a vault. But the message leaves the vault, floating into the wider world of the cell, carrying instructions written in a molecular whisper. And what is this message for? It's a recipe for a protein. Proteins are the makers, the doers, the soft machines of your body. They build, they carry, they protect, they signal. Every breath, every blink, every heartbeat, these actions begin and end with proteins. But they do not appear from nowhere. They must be made. And to be made, they must be folded. This is the part that feels like magic. You see, the RNA carries its message to a special part of the cell called the ribosome. You might think of the ribosome as a quiet weaver, sitting patiently at a molecular loom. It reads the message 3 letters at a time, 3 bases from the RNA forming a codon, each one a word in the language of life. And with each word, the ribosome threads together a chain of amino acids. These are the building blocks of proteins, tiny units with different shapes, charges, personalities. One by one, they are stitched into a chain, like beads on a string, each placed exactly in order. But here's where the miracle happens. Once this chain is complete, it begins to fold. Not randomly, not clumsily, but precisely, rapidly, and often beautifully. The chain bends, loops, twists, and tucks itself into a 3-dimensional shape. This shape, not just the ingredients, is what gives the protein its function. A protein shaped like a pocket might catch and carry oxygen. One shaped like a tunnel might allow signals to pass through a nerve. One shaped like scissors might cut apart molecules that no longer belong. Shape is everything. And yet, it is born from a string. Imagine folding a long ribbon into a paper crane. using only the tug of chemistry, the pull of water, the magnetism of atoms. No hands, no mind, just motion guided by the laws of attraction. This is the elegance of folding. Every time a protein folds, it becomes something new. It changes from a simple thread into a structure, from instruction into action. This is how your body reads the code, not in words, but in motion, in shape, in function. And what tells the protein how to fold? Nothing and everything. The folding instructions are buried in the chain itself, in the sequence of amino acids, in their personalities and preferences. Some push away from water. Some cling to it. Some bend, some stretch, some nestle. Together, they pull the thread into its final form, like dancers finding their places in a circle. If the code is a melody, then the protein is the song performed. Lived, embodied, shaped. But folding is fragile. Sometimes, a small change in the DNA, a single letter replaced, creates a different amino acid in the chain. That change might not matter. But sometimes, it changes the fold. A curve becomes a kink. A pocket collapses. The protein no longer fits where it once did. A tool becomes a broken key. This is how disease begins. And sometimes, how new abilities are born. It's a delicate balance, a system so robust that life continues, yet so sensitive that a tiny shift can echo through the body. Your body folds thousands of proteins every moment, while you breathe, while you think, while you rest. Each one performs its quiet task, holding you together, keeping you in rhythm with life. And it's not just humans. All life folds. All living things, plants, fungi, whales, bees, use the same dance, the same rules, the same logic of shape. The protein you use to carry oxygen is shaped nearly the same as the one in a mouse. The protein that allows your cells to divide has echoes in ancient bacteria. You are not just made of yourself. You are made of the solutions life has tried and kept, folded across time. Each protein is a memory folded into function. Each one is a small triumph of order over chaos. And still, despite all this precision, the cell allows room for chance. Some folds are assisted, chaperoned by helper molecules that ensure no tangle occurs. Others take their chances alone, trusting the rhythm of chemistry to guide them. The balance between order and spontaneity is what allows life to grow, not locked into perfection, but open to the surprise of what a new fold might bring. And isn't that what makes you human, too? The ability to follow a pattern, but also to deviate from it, to be a shape that fits, and a shape still folding. Tonight, as you fall deeper into rest, imagine the folded threads of you, moving silently, invisibly, each one a sculpted breath, a purposeful curl, a shape that knows how to be useful. But now you may wonder, what happens when a fold comes from a copy that went slightly wrong? In the hush of the night, as your breath slows and your mind softens, your body continues its quiet rituals. Within your cells, tiny machines hum along, copying, folding, repeating the same motions they've practiced for billions of years. But even the most careful hands sometimes slip. Imagine a scribe tracing the same sentence over and over. Once in a while, their ink runs short, or a finger smudges a letter. Most of the time, the meaning stays intact, but occasionally, the message changes. The same thing happens in you, not with pens, but with molecules. These are mutations, not monsters, not curses, just tiny mistakes. A swapped letter, a missing piece, a small addition. They happen when your cells copy your DNA, a process repeated countless times across your lifetime. Your body is very good at getting it right, but perfection is not the point. The point is possibility. Let's go inside. Imagine a strand of DNA being unzipped, like a zipper parting at the seams. Each half becomes a guide. New letters begin to attach, following the familiar rules, A with T, C with G. But sometimes, just sometimes, the wrong letter slips in, or an extra one lingers, or a letter is skipped entirely. One misplaced note in an ancient melody. Your cells usually notice. They have quiet editors, enzymes that scan the strands, looking for errors, fixing most of them before they can cause trouble. But sometimes, a mistake slips past. The editors let it through, and a new message is born. Most of these changes are harmless. Some do nothing at all. Some even break things. A protein folds the wrong way. A cell stops working. A function fades. But occasionally, just occasionally, a small change helps. Imagine a polar bear in a freezing world. Somewhere in its ancient lineage, a mutation changed the pigment of its fur. Not because it was needed, not because the bear asked. Just a mistake in copying. But white fur blended better with snow. The bear hunted more easily. It survived. It passed the white fur gene forward. A mistake became an advantage. This is how evolution works. Not with planning or direction, but through trial and error. Through accidents that get remembered. Through changes that change everything. You, your eyes, your hands, your thoughts are not just products of design. You are a mosaic of old errors that worked. Even your ability to sleep, the rhythms of melatonin, the slow shift of body temperature at night, evolved over time through genetic variations. Your circadian clock is a record of what worked for ancient ancestors under ancient stars. You are a history of successful mistakes. Some mutations are passed down from parent to child, whispers in the code that echo across generations. Others arise anew, as fresh edits in the long scroll. And some are hidden for lifetimes, only to rise later in a new body, a new place, a new world. Not all changes are visible. Some are quiet. A tweak in how your body processes sound. A shift in how your immune system reacts to pollen. Some may never be noticed at all, but they are there. Little footprints in your biology. And while some mutations are linked to illness, cancer, for instance, often begins with a miscopied letter, even these stories are not without complexity. Because the same code that can stumble is also the code that knows how to repair, to adapt, to continue. Your body is not fragile. It is resilient. It learns from its own errors, and in doing so, it survives. The beauty of the genetic code is not just in how it copies. It's in how it tolerates change. And sometimes, that change becomes beauty. A new feather pattern on a bird. A resistance to a disease. A novel brain pathway that leads to new ways of thinking. In a very real way, evolution is the poetry of errors. Every mutation is a verse, some clumsy, some elegant, written by time. And what is more human than that? You, who have tried and failed and tried again. You, who carry small scars and new strengths born from struggle. Your DNA does the same. It tries. It slips. It adapts. And in that quiet process, life grows. Tonight, as you drift in the soft currents of rest, your cells are doing what they've always done. Copying. Folding. Repeating. Some copies will be perfect. Some, not quite. But each one is a step, a gentle footfall on the long, spiraling path of becoming. And if a mistake once helped shape your eye color, or the curl of your hair, or the way your blood clots or doesn't, what else might be hidden in these silent, shifting codes? Because if your DNA carries echoes of change, it must also carry echoes of others. What parts of you are shared with creatures you've never met? What lines in your code are borrowed from the trees, the whales, the moss beneath your feet? Tonight, as your breath deepens and your thoughts begin to soften, you rest not just in your bed, but in a long, unbroken story. A story you share with creatures that crawl, swim, root, and bloom. Your body may feel singular, this shape, this heartbeat, this one life. But the code within you carries echoes from lives far beyond your own. Let us drift into the quiet places where those echoes sing. Imagine you could stretch your DNA like a ribbon across time. Lay it beside the ribbons of other living things. A hawk, a fern, a mushroom hidden beneath the soil, a dolphin gliding through saltwater light. If you look closely, gently, you'd notice something remarkable. Parts of the code match, not by coincidence, but by inheritance. You share genes with the butterfly, with the banana, with the oak tree that stands unmoving for centuries. Not identical stories, but familiar lines, as if each living thing is a variation of a single, ancient song. Because all life comes from the same beginning, the same sea, the same copying molecule. That early shape, that first self-replicating thread, split, multiplied, adapted, diverged. Some cells began to live in groups. Some became more complex. Some learned to photosynthesize, turning sunlight into food. Others grew mouths, limbs, spines. Still others stayed small, quiet, microbial, but just as old, just as wise. And all of them, all of us, carried parts of the same code forward. Even now, your body carries genes once used by single-celled ancestors. Some still active, others lying silent, like old tools packed away in forgotten drawers. The gene that tells your body how to make energy? You share it with yeast. The code that helps your cells divide? You share it with worms. The blueprint for building limbs? It first appeared in fish. You may walk, speak, dream, but your biology still sings ancient refrains. There's comfort in that. You are not alone. You are not newly made. You are connected by threads invisible but real. Biological poetry passed from ancestor to ancestor, life to life. And these connections are not just poetic, they are practical. When scientists study fruit flies, mice, zebrafish, or even mustard plants, they are not studying something other. They are peering into mirrors, small reflections of our own biology. We learn how genes behave in humans by watching how they behave in creatures we rarely notice. Because at the level of the code, we are not as different as we appear. Of course, the differences matter too. They shape how a lion roars and a whale sings and a sunflower turns its face to light. But the similarities, oh, the similarities. They are what remind us of our shared origin. One of the most surprising places we find these echoes is in our brains. The gene that helps guide neuron connections in your mind has a cousin in jellyfish, creatures with no brain at all. The seeds of thought were planted long before thinking minds evolved. The architecture was being sketched before the first mind had a name. Even the color of your blood, red with iron, is just one of nature's choices. Some creatures, like octopuses, use copper instead. The function is the same, to carry oxygen, but the form changes. The echo is adapted, remixed, rewritten. And then there are the silent echoes, genes that no longer speak, but still exist. Your DNA holds fossilized code. Sequences that once did something important in ancient ancestors but are now dormant. They are called pseudogenes, genetic ghosts. They're not broken. They're reminders that your body has been through many versions, that life has tried many paths before arriving here. Even viruses have left their mark. Some pieces of your DNA come from ancient viral infections, written into your genome like graffiti from a time before time. Sometimes, these viral echoes are harmful. Sometimes, they protect you. And sometimes, they sit silently, waiting in the code, part of you now. And the connections don't stop with biology. The air you breathe is recycled breath, inhaled by wolves, trees, whales, and your ancestors. The water in your veins may have once rested in a glacier, a cloud, a cup held by a child 10,000 years ago. Even the atoms in your bones were born in stars. exploded, scattered, remade into new forms. The deeper you go, the less alone you become. You are not a separate entity, but a chapter in a long, living text, each creature a verse, each gene a rhyme, each life a temporary voice in the planetary chorus. And when you feel disconnected, remember, the language of life is shared, not fully, not exactly, but recognizably. You were not built from nothing. You were composed from echoes. And yet, you might wonder, if so much of you is shared, what about the parts that don't speak at all? What about the parts of your code that stay silent, quiet in their spiral, never turning into sound or shape or movement? Are they leftovers? Or are they waiting for their moment to speak? The night wraps around you like a soft shell. The stars above remain silent. But deep within your cells, silence has its own kind of voice. Not everything in your DNA speaks. In fact, most of it does not. Of the 3.2 billion letters that make up the human genome, only a small fraction, less than 2%, are translated into proteins. The rest? It lies quiet. For years, scientists called it junk DNA, an unfortunate name for what was simply unknown, untranslated, unexpressed, uncharted. But silence is not the same as uselessness. And in nature, very little is truly wasted. So tonight, we turn our attention to what isn't said, to the space between the instructions, the letters that don't become tools, the lines that aren't performed, but still remain. Imagine a book, each chapter filled with meaning. But between those chapters, margins, pauses, white space. Would you call those spaces junk? Or would you recognize their importance? How they shape the rhythm of what is read. Your DNA is a book like that. The parts that build proteins are like verses in a poem. But between them, long stretches lie unspoken now. Not ignored, just waiting. Some of these regions hold instructions about how and when to read the parts that do speak. They are not the actors in the play, but the stage crew, the lighting, the cues. They tell the cell when to turn a gene on or off, when to raise the volume, when to keep quiet. Without them, the script would be chaotic. Everything said at once. No timing, no order. And some of these silent sequences do nothing. As far as we know, they drift, unchanged. Like old carvings in a cave no longer visited. But just because we do not yet understand their meaning, does not mean they are meaningless. Consider introns, segments within a gene that are transcribed but then cut out, before the message is used. They are like drafts never spoken aloud. Still part of the process, still needed, even if only briefly. Consider transposons, jumping genes, pieces of DNA that can move from one place to another, silently shuffling the text. Sometimes they cause harm. Sometimes they bring surprise. There are the editors you didn't know were there. And then there are long stretches of repeated code. Stutters in the spiral. Short phrases like echoes. Gada 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 gada. Endless, looping. What do? No one is quite sure. But they sit in your genome like mantras. Unchanging. Constant. Quiet. You might carry sequences passed down for millions of years that no longer do what they once did. Or perhaps they never did anything. Until one day, they do. Evolution does not write with clean lines. It scribbles, revises, reuses. Sometimes it sets down a verse, long before it is needed, like a puzzle piece with no clear match, held in reserve, until the shape of the world changes. And suddenly, it fits. The silence in your genome may be like that. Not emptiness, but potential, the raw clay of the future. And in that silence, there is mystery. Some of these non-coding regions are incredibly conserved. Identical between species, A chunk of DNA in you matches perfectly with one in a mouse, or a chicken, or a fruit fly. If it truly did nothing, why would evolution keep it so precisely intact? It's as though the silence is humming, too soft to hear, but not too soft to matter. You may carry hidden instructions for responding to future stress, or dormant regulators that awaken only in extreme conditions. A famine, a fever, a deep trauma. You may carry ancient viral code, written not by your ancestors, but by intruders who left behind genetic fingerprints when they made a home in your ancestors' cells. Some of these viral echoes now help form your placenta. Others help regulate your immune system. What once invaded now protects. In this way, silence becomes a second kind of language. Not direct, but contextual. It shapes the pauses between the notes, the rest between the beats. You are not just made of what is said. You are also made of what is held, what is kept, what is not yet revealed. Tonight, as you drift deeper, imagine your genome not as a list of instructions, but as a great, vast landscape. Mountains where genes rise and speak, valleys where silence settles and waits, rivers of sequence that twist and loop, caves where ancient messages echo, unread but present. And in this landscape, nothing is truly empty. Even silence has structure, even absence has form, because what we call junk may one day be called treasure, and what we skip over today may be the sentence that saves us tomorrow. As your body rests, its quiet code continues. Speaking, pausing, skipping, folding, remembering. And somewhere in the silence of your genome, something may be stirring. A line waiting to be spoken, a page waiting to be turned. But if there are lines not meant for you alone, could they be meant for another? What happens when one species borrows the code of another? On purpose? You lie in the hush between thoughts, your body soft in the arms of stillness, but somewhere far away, or perhaps deep inside, a quiet hand holds a pen over the ancient scroll of life. In this time, the hand belongs not to nature, but to us. For billions of years, DNA changed slowly, copied, shuffled, edited by mistake or need. Its poetry was rewritten only by time. But now, we have learned to read it, and more recently, to write. This chapter belongs to that moment. The moment when life begins to rewrite itself. It starts with CRISPR, a strange name, soft in sound, sharp in purpose. Clustered regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats. A mouthful, but in truth, a memory system. Discovered first in bacteria. Bacteria, those smallest of survivors, use CRISPR to remember viral attackers. Like immune journals, they keep pieces of viral code in their own DNA so they can recognize and fight future threats. Within this system, there is a tool, a molecule called Cas9. You might think of it as molecular scissors. It can seek out a sequence of DNA and cut it precisely right where it's told, not randomly, not by luck, but with purpose. Scientists learn to guide this tool using snippets of RNA, custom-designed maps, pointing to exact locations in the genome. And once the cut is made, the cell tries to fix it, sometimes by patching it back together, sometimes by inserting something new, a new sentence, a new function, a new future. This is not just observation. This is editing. We have moved from reading life's story to revising it. Imagine a child born without the ability to hear, not because of fate, but because a single gene is miswritten. Now imagine correcting that gene before birth, not replacing the child, but unlocking the version of them that hears birdsong, wind, laughter, This is the dream, and also the question, because with such power comes wonder. And wait, what happens when we change the story? What lines must we never touch? Already, CRISPR has been used to create plants that resist drought, to build mosquitoes that no longer spread malaria, to grow pigs whose organs could be safer for transplant. Pieces of code borrowed from one species, placed into another. A gene from a jellyfish that glows, inserted into a mouse, now glowing green under soft light. A bacterial protein that helps crops survive disease. A coral gene studied in yeast. Human insulin now made not by the body, but by bacteria, engineered to carry our code, and quietly, selflessly, produce medicine. We call these changes transgenic. But what they really are is blended, not natural, perhaps, but not unnatural either. Because life, in its own time, has always traded code, even before us. Genes moved sideways across species. Viruses stitched their DNA into hosts. Bacteria swapped useful pieces like whispered secrets. Corn as we know it did not evolve alone. It was shaped by generations of hands. Long before microscopes. What is new is the precision, the intention, the speed. We now stand at the edge of possibility and restraint. We can ask, what if we made cells that cure disease from within? What if we gave trees the power to grow faster, clean the air better, store more carbon? What if we made changes, not just to one body, but to all that body's future children? This is called germline editing. Changing the code in sperm, eggs, or embryos. In this step is the threshold, because now we're not just editing life, we're editing inheritance, editing memory. A change made here echoes forever. So we ask, what do we fix? What do we enhance? What do we leave untouched? Because even as we hold the pen, we are still learning the language, still discovering what parts of the code speak loudest, which silences matter most. And sometimes a change brings unseen ripples. One trait altered, another unexpectedly shifted, a better tomato, but less flavor, a stronger bone, but less flexibility. Nature writes with balance, and when we revise, we must listen. You may ask, is this safe? Is this right? Are we gods or gardeners? But perhaps the better question is, are we listening? Do we know enough to change the future's script without silencing the wisdom of the past? Because the code we now hold is not just human, it is shared, it is sacred, it is stitched with meaning, older than language, older than names. So tonight, you float in that soft space between reverence and innovation, between the possibility of healing and the humility of restraint. CRISPR is a tool, a powerful one, but a tool is only as wise as the hand that guides it. As you drift into sleep, imagine all life not separate, but interconnected strands in a vast woven fabric. To touch one thread is to move the others, and that brings a new question. If we are made of threads, woven from the same loom, how do we trace where each thread began? How did the earliest ancestors, those invisible beings, pass on their quiet blueprint to become everything? Sleep softens your mind, but somewhere deeper, deeper than dreams, your body remembers the beginning, not the day you were born, but the day your story was first whispered into existence. Long before humans, long before breath. To understand how you came to be, you must drift beyond identity, beyond memory, to the first living thread, the first ancestor. Not a person, not even a creature, but a single cell, floating in ancient water, holding the simplest truth. I can make more of me. That was enough. One became two. Two became four. Each division a quiet promise. This is not the end. This is the beginning again. Every life you see, every life you've never seen. From blue whales to blades of grass, mushrooms to mosquitoes. All descend from that first spark, from a single origin, a shared, silent ancestor. Scientists call it Luca, the last universal common ancestor, a name for something that had no name, not the first life, but the last ancestor that connects all known life today, a humble cell, living more than 3.5 billion years ago. What did Luca look like? You wouldn't see eyes, skin, or bones. You'd see a tiny membrane, a warm soup of molecules, a coiled strand of genetic code, enough to replicate, enough to metabolize, enough to persist. Inside Luca were tools we still carry, ribosomes that build proteins, enzymes that shape energy, the code written in the same four letters, A, T, C, and G, the very alphabet still singing inside your body now. This ancestor didn't need limbs. It didn't need thought. It only needed to survive long enough to divide. Again and again. And in doing so, it gave rise to two great paths. One path led to bacteria, simple, hardy, endlessly adaptive. The other path led to archaea, also single-celled, thriving in heat, salt, acid, extremes. For a long time, that was all life was. Small, solitary, unseen. But then, something changed. One cell, somewhere, engulfed another. Not to destroy it, but to live alongside it. The swallowed cell survived inside its host, became part of it, and began to help. It made energy. It offered power. And so, it stayed. This was the birth of complex life, not from domination, but from collaboration. That engulfed cell became the mitochondrion, the power station of nearly every cell in your body today, inside you. Every heartbeat, every breath, is lit by this ancient alliance. It was a turning point, from simple to complex, from lonely to communal. From these early complex cells came everything else. Algae, worms, ferns, birds, apes. And you. You are the echo of a cell that once chose not to kill, but to merge. That's the strange truth of life. We are made of cooperation. We are the children of truce. And Luca? Luca is not gone. Luca is not past. You are Luca, distilled, evolved, disguised in human form. You are a living fossil of that original persistence. The ribosomes in your cells still build proteins the same way. The code still folds, still repeats, still adapts. Even the way your cells divide follows ancient choreography, mitosis, like an old dance still performed. And every time a child is born, that dance continues. But you are not just descended from Luca. You are a branch on a vast, tangled tree, a tree with no trunk, only ever-branching paths, twisting, crossing, diverging, converging. Life does not move in straight lines. It sprawls. It improvises. It repeats. From Luca came millions of lineages. Some ended. Some endured. Those that endured passed on parts of their code, bits and pieces that still live in your body. A heat-stable enzyme from an ancestor of archaea. A lipid layer shaped by ancient bacterial genes. A protein first used by a microbe that clung to a hydrothermal vent. And these ancestors, they still live around you. Some in soil, some in your gut, some in the deep ocean. Hardly changed in billions of years. They are not relics. They are reminders. that you are not separate from the microbial world. You are one of its experiments, a towering, dreaming, language-making version of a cell that once floated, with no thought of purpose, but the instinct to stay alive. Tonight, as you lie in stillness, know this: you are not an invention. You are an inheritance. You are not alone at the end of time. You are time, looped and knotted into flesh. Luca whispers in every heartbeat, every dividing cell, every moment of growth. And yet, if all this code came from one quiet ancestor and has been copied, mutated, folded, passed on, then we must ask, how did this code know how to build you? Not just life, but a body, with symmetry, with limbs, with a beating heart? What tells a cell where the head should go and where the fingers should grow? What invisible blueprint shapes the architecture of something so precise? What organizes the chaos into a body that knows itself? What turns code into form? The night deepens and your breath softens into rhythm. But inside, where bone meets blood and thought meets silence, a question hums beneath your skin. How does your body know what to become? Not just what to make, but where to make it. Why eyes here and not on your arms? Why does your heart not grow in your foot or your ribs behind your spine? You are not thrown together. You are composed. Every part of you follows an invisible plan, an ancient, quiet architecture woven into your genes. Not a map drawn with ink, but a language of gradients, signals, and switches. It begins early, before you ever had a heartbeat. You were just a cluster of cells, a ball of possibility, identical, undifferentiated. But soon, some cells begin to speak differently, not in words, in chemical whispers. A little more of one signal here, a little less there. These shifts create a sense of direction, a body knowing which way is up, which is forward. Asymmetry blooms. The cells begin to diverge. This is pattern formation, the first choreography of a body. And within it are special guides, Hox genes, tiny, powerful genes that decide what goes where. They are master switches, not building tools themselves, but conductors of the orchestra. A Hox gene might tell a group of cells, you will become a leg, or this is where the neck begins. What's remarkable is that these same genes, with small variations, exist in flies, fish, and humans alike. The same toolkit, used in different ways. In a fruit fly, Hox genes decide the placement of wings and antennae. In you, they help define your spine, your rib cage, the curve of your limbs. One gene can shape a form, not by creating parts, but by giving parts a place. Think of your body as a building, and Hox genes as the blueprint's page numbers. They don't draw the walls, but they tell you which room is first, which room follows. And yet, the story is not told by Hox genes alone. There are gradients of chemicals, morphogens, that flow across the embryo, like colored mist, where the concentration is highest. Cells respond one way. Where it fades, they respond another. It's not a rigid instruction, but a suggestion, a cue, an environment that gently nudges. Your fingers form because cells at the tips of your hand received a signal that told them to stop dividing, while the cells in between were instructed to die. Yes, death is part of form. The space between your fingers is made from cells that were told to disappear. Sculpting by subtraction, art by letting go. And this process, though it feels deliberate, is emergent. It arises not from a brain, but from local conversation. Cells talk to their neighbors. They compare signals. They ask, where am I? What are you becoming? And in that conversation, form emerges. It's easy to imagine your body as a machine built from a master plan. but it's more like a murmuration of birds, patterns forming through interaction, not imposed from above. Even identical twins, born from the same starting cell, can end up with different fingerprints, different freckles, different folds of skin. The code is not destiny. It is guidance, and it allows for variation. Small differences in timing, or temperature, or molecular noise can create surprising, beautiful shifts. This is how evolution finds new forms, not by inventing new genes, but by tweaking how and where old ones speak. A gene that once made a tooth now helps shape feathers. A gene that once built gills now supports your jaw. Old tools, new uses. You are not a static sculpture. You are a process, still unfolding. Even in adulthood, your body remembers how to repair, how to regrow. A cut on your skin summons cells to rebuild. Bone broken knits itself again. That original blueprint never fully leaves you. It's always present, quiet beneath the surface. And perhaps this is why your form feels so natural. Not because it was always meant to be this way, but because every part of you remembers how to become. Your face, with its symmetry, its familiar contours, was never chosen. It arose from gradients, switches, cascades, interactions so small they could never be seen by the eye. And yet, here you are, eyes aligned, hands mirrored, organs tucked exactly where they're needed, form from flux, order from waves, structure born in silence. Tonight, you lie still, but inside you is a memory of shape, of space, of how to grow in the right direction. And still the question lingers. If cells can organize into something as precise as a spine, as delicate as an eyelash, then what else can emerge from that same code? Can it give rise not just to a body, but to a mind, to thoughts, dreams, emotions, to the you that watches, remembers, and wonders? How does matter begin to think? How does your genetic code become your consciousness? You lie still beneath a blanket of stars, but inside your head, galaxies of thought drift and spark. Ideas rise, dissolve, repeat. You remember a voice, a dream, a question. But where do these thoughts come from? Your body is matter, atoms, molecules, electric signals, and water. And yet, you think, you feel, you wonder. That's the deepest mystery of all. How does a handful of genes write something as invisible as you? Let's begin again at the root. You were once just cells, dividing, organizing, forming a body. Among them, a small cluster began to specialize. These would become neurons, nerve cells. From a single layer in your tiny embryo, a neural tube formed, a hollow thread that would blossom into your spinal cord and brain. As you floated in warmth and quiet, your brain grew rapidly. 250,000 new neurons born each minute in the earliest days. And then, those neurons began to reach, stretching out thin branches called axons. They searched for partners. They sent signals, tiny chemical invitations, trying to connect. Some made contact, others did not. The ones that failed died quietly. The ones that succeeded stayed. And in this way, a network began to form, a web of connections. Not just structure, but potential. By the time you were born, your brain held more than 100 billion neurons, each forming up to 10,000 connections. But still, you were not yet fully you, because neurons alone are not consciousness. They are the wires, not the current. Consciousness is not just in the parts, but in the pattern. It arises from the movement, the signals racing, echoing, looping, slowing, accelerating. And those signals, they're not random. They follow paths shaped by genes, but also by experience. When you see light, when you feel touch, when you hear music, those experiences light up new patterns. Some fade, some repeat. The more they repeat, the stronger they become. This is neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to change. The pathways you use often become faster, smoother. The ones you ignore grow quiet. This means your brain is never fixed. It's always becoming. Even now, as you lie in the dark, your neurons whisper to one another. Your brain replays moments from the day, softly rewiring itself as you sleep. Dreams shimmer into being. Memories reorganize. Some connections grow stronger, others dim. And somehow, within this electrical dance, you emerge, not as a single location, but as a process, a wave across the brain. You are awareness that loops and listens to itself. And you are more than thought. You are feeling too. Your brain receives signals from the rest of your body. Your gut, your lungs, your skin. These messages create sensation, emotion, intuition. You are not a mind trapped in a body. You are a body that gives rise to mind. And it's all written in code. Not just genes, but the way genes are expressed. A gene might build a receptor that senses serotonin. Another might shape how neurons fire. Another still might influence how easily you learn, how vividly you imagine, how deeply you feel. But none of these genes alone create you. You are the sum of their chorus, and the rhythm of how that chorus responds to the world. Even the act of wondering, this quiet moment now, where you listen inward and feel a question rise, is shaped by billions of molecular decisions, each neuron choosing to fire or not fire, to speak or stay silent. But the meaning, that belongs to you. No microscope can find you under a slide. No skin can capture your imagination, your sorrow, your hope. Those are emergent. They arise from structure, but they transcend it. Your brain is matter, but your mind is metaphor. And still, all of it begins with code. Code that not only builds a brain, but allows that brain to change, to reflect, to remember, to ask, who am I? How did molecules come to ask their own meaning? You are not a puppet of your DNA. You are a dance of nature and nurture. The genes set the stage. The world writes the play. And your choices, even the gentle ones, add new lines every day. Tonight, your brain rests, but your mind continues, floating between memory and dream, between biology and story. And somewhere in this quiet, a thought glows faintly. If consciousness can emerge from code, might the code carry even more? Is there a deeper pattern still, a final rhythm beneath it all? A design so subtle, we've only just begun to hear it? What if life itself is not just built from code, but shaped by something more elusive? The laws of order and disorder, of energy, of entropy? What happens when code meets chaos and learns how to survive it? Outside, the world lies still, but deep within you, motion never stops. Your heart beats, your lungs rise and fall, your cells, even in sleep, hum with activity. Quiet factories, each one fighting the pull of disorder. Because left alone, everything drifts toward chaos. This is entropy, the tendency for systems to move, from order to disorder, from structure to scatter, from neat to noise. Ice melts, ink spreads in water, stars collapse, memory fades. In physics, entropy is a measure of randomness. The amount of disorder in a system, and the universe always leans toward more of it, more spread, more mess, more loss. And yet, here you are, ordered, alive, aware. You are a local rebellion against the vast drift of entropy. Every breath you take pulls in energy to push against that drift. Every heartbeat is a temporary victory against the unraveling. Life does not escape entropy, but it delays it. It resists it. It builds small islands of order in an ocean of chaos. Your body uses energy to fold proteins precisely, to repair DNA errors, to keep cells clean and aligned. But this order requires work, constant, quiet effort. The moment that work stops, decay begins. Entropy is why you age, why cells wear down, why systems slowly lose precision. But entropy is not your enemy. It is the rhythm that life dances with, a challenge, not a curse. Imagine a sandcastle on the shore. Entropy is the tide, and life is the builder, hand sculpting, reshaping, always knowing the waves will come, and yet building anyway. Because in resisting entropy, life becomes beautiful. It becomes creative. It becomes resilient. Even at the molecular level, your cells are constantly repairing, fixing damaged DNA, recycling broken parts, replacing old with new. You are never still, even at rest. You are being remade, and this dance with entropy begins early. The moment a single cell becomes two, life is negotiating the terms of survival. Entropy never stops, but neither does life. This tension between decay and design is what allows evolution. Mistakes occur, mutations slip in, some weaken, some surprise. Every living thing is a product of that friction, the chaos that erodes, and the order that adapts. And even in death, entropy is not waste. It is transformation. Your body returns its elements to the soil, the sky, the stream. Nothing is lost, only rearranged. This is the deep law of the universe. Everything tends to spread, but sometimes, briefly, against all odds. It gathers, it builds, it sings. You are one of those songs, a brief alignment of matter that reflects on its own being, a pattern so rare that it can hold a thought, a memory, a question. So tonight, as you breathe slowly, feel the miracle of that pattern, not permanent, but persistent, not perfect, but purposeful. Entropy may be inevitable, but it also makes room for newness. Without it, the universe would be static, still, silent. Instead, it churns, it mixes, it surprises. Life doesn't escape entropy. It learns how to dance with it. That's what your body does each day. That's what evolution has done for billions of years. That's what stars do when they forge elements in their final blaze. It's what the genetic code did when it copied itself over and over, adapting through noise. Even thought itself may be a kind of organized entropy, a swirl of signals from which meaning arises. So, you see, there is no war between life and entropy. There is only relationship. The more complex a system becomes, the more it must manage disorder, and the more beautifully it can grow. You are not a fixed sculpture. You are a living balance, order and chaos, pattern and possibility, structure and surrender. And even as you sleep, your cells continue this quiet balancing act. A trillion small resistances against the unraveling. You may ask, will the code last forever? No, but it doesn't have to. Its power lies not in permanence, but in passing on what matters before it fades. And what is passed on is not just biology, but memory, emotion, story. And so, As your eyes drift closed, you carry all of it. Code, mind, form, and motion, gently through the night. Because though entropy unravels, you remember how to begin again. Still, one final mystery lingers in the quiet. If all life shares this language, could we one day decode not just our bodies, but life itself, its origin, its rhythm, its cosmic fingerprint? Could the genetic code be more than instructions? Could it be a signature? And maybe this code that dances through time, the one that built you from atoms and silence, was never just a set of instructions, but a signature, a trace of something larger, woven into every cell, quietly asking to be noticed. And if this story stirred a sense of wonder in you, if it made your breath slow, or your thoughts stretch just a little further into the stars, then let that wonder ripple outward. Leave a gentle like. Share a thought in the comments. Your questions, your dreams, your favorite moment. And if you'd like to keep drifting through stories like this, click subscribe and follow the thread of sleep, science, and softness. With us again next time. This is the Bedtime Sleep, where curiosity never stops. Even as you rest, good night.